in the group, maybe make some new friends at the end of the day too. So there's my title, as you know, because you already signed up for this. My background quickly, until very recently taught a 500 level class on secondary data research for entrepreneurship and economic development. And students had to, in addition to using data sets, had to try to use AI and try to find data and other kinds of information to support their work. And then, of course, include their prompts and their responses and their reply to me, and also assessment, like how did this go for you? What did you think? And so it was useful seeing the students' own interaction and manipulation of prompt engineering as they go through it in response to my suggestions or just doing their own work. Also have served on the formerly existing task force that Provost organized for AI, blog about AI occasionally, and support, as you can see by my title there, the business school, which because of and you argue about this later if you want to, or not argue about it, but discuss it. Given that the fact that employers seem to be wanting AI skills in our students or experience, the business school is incorporating AI, and I think in a way that's very responsible and ethically centered. And my colleague Morgan Robinson could speak to that too. She's in the room today. And therefore, I also have to use AI because I'm supporting the business students. But also, I should mention real quick, I also work with policy, nonprofit management, arts administration, economic geography. So I'm not just a business school librarian. I work with other units as well. All right, enough on that. Questions, comments, welcome anytime. If you want to have, if we have time for a broader discussion about AI in libraries, welcome that too, but maybe at the end. And we might turn off recording at the end just so you can speak freely. Yeah, and I have more to say, of course, but that's probably a good introduction. I'm getting over a cold. You probably hear that in my voice already. Apologize for that. I did do a 90-minute workshop last night. Went okay. My voice handled it, I think, pretty well, students said. So hopefully in this short talk, it'll be okay with you all. Here's the agenda. I won't read this to you. I'll let you read it yourself. Number 3 and number 4 will be the majority of the slides. All right, we're going to move on. So just top level, broad picture. Why do we need this? Why do we need to prompt engineer? Quick response, it's a tool. It's not the answer. The large language model AIs are a tool. And we have to make sure they work for us in ways that are both useful, of course, effective, but also responsible. And to help make those things happen, useful and responsive, for example, we have to make sure that we are talking to it correctly, including simply having quality responses. And you all probably heard of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, low quality prompts result in low quality responses. So it's the same for AI. You have to do work to make it work well for us. And you can see 4 more bullet points there about things to consider. And you'll see all those things, role playing, for example, trying to identify or recognize bias reflected in the best practices I will be presenting in a few minutes, as well as some of the examples I have as well. Copilot, as some of you know, our only official UNCG licensed tool besides the Adobe product that does images creation, usually provides links to the sources, which is wonderful. Allows you to click through and see where they're getting their data from. Other tools don't necessarily do that. Gemini, for example, which has got so much better in many ways, still does not normally provide links. So we have to ask for that, for example, and formats too, as you'll see an example of that in just a minute. So that's kind of big picture. Oop, wrong direction, sorry. But a short digression here. And maybe a disclaimer, there are many models, as you probably know, many frameworks for how to do good prompt engineering. Often they are defined by acronyms because we academics love acronyms, librarians too, as part of a subset. Academics love acronyms. And some of these even have more than one meaning. So I randomly, first off, I asked Copilot to make a list of all the known acronyms for prompt engineering. Then I had to alphabetize it. Then I cut and pasted it. And then I had it randomly pick the last one and tell me what it means. And actually there were 4 different meanings of it. You can see there on screen. Only the E is the same. Example, representing the E. Each other letter has at least one divergent among these 4. So just interesting, I think, how many of these exist. However, let's break this down a little bit. And I actually saw something this morning I'm going to mention as well. So the first of these trace definitions is engineering centered. Second one is workflow planning. Workflows, strategic planning, organizational effectiveness. Number 3 is K-12 education based. Number 4 is instructional design. So each of these has a different purpose. And this morning, I'm going to not change my share, but I'm going to show you something. Refer to a web page real quick, so I'm going to look at this, but stay where you are. In my news feed this morning, I learned about a new article in the Journal of Academic Librarianship. A couple medical librarians wrote it. AI prompts for clinical questions, evaluating information literacy frameworks in health science education, in which they did a study using fourth-year medical students using the CLEAR framework. And if you're looking at my slide, CLEAR is one of those that I put up last week, but also PICO, P-I-C-O, population, patient problem, intervention, comparison control, and outcome. That's what PICO stands for, which is a 30 years old evidence-based practices method of critical thinking for research about health sciences. And this study tried to connect the CLEAR framework with PICO. In conclusion, just a line from the abstract, just only one sentence, I promise. These findings emphasize the importance of context-specific, domain-relevant frameworks in AI and patient literacy, AI literacy training for health science professionals, suggesting that effective health science-focused AI tools must provide reliable sources and features tailored to clinical decision-making needs. So maybe even though we have all these acronyms, and I was kind of, making fun of it a little bit by making these two slides, there's value in us having domain-specific, using the article language, prompt engineering. So I'm going to give you my own model I like to use. It's very similar to most of these, but there are others out there, and we may see more development of domain subject-specific prompting as we go along. Okay. So big picture, best practices. 5 things here. Precision and specificity. I can't say that word well. Take me with my gold. Sorry. Being specific. I can say that version. Really important. You have to explain who and why you're doing this. What's the context? Emphasizing to us and to students, it's a process. You don't just put in one sentence and say, I'm done. I can't change anything. You keep refining and improving as needed. And there's even other methods, and I refer to this later on, of not just putting in a big paragraph of suggestions, but asking for a series of prompts or asking for instructions. So there's big picture, and you'll see this broken down into pieces in my next set of slides here. And I'm sorry, a lot of words on these slides, but this is a discussion topic about words, about language, about writing sentences. So I apologize for other words. It's going to get worse in a few minutes too. All right, 7 things. So power words or smart words. I tell students these are the things you learn in class. These are the technical language, specialized language concepts, vocabulary that your professors talk about and that you read in your textbooks and other sources, classroom content. So, and I could give examples of each of these right now, but I have examples coming up where you'll see these in action. So students I tell them no, don't just use, human language. Sorry, I don't think I need to say that again. Don't use basic language, use specialized language, jargon, learning content. It makes your prompts better. Number 2, purpose and role. Why are you doing this? What's the outcome? What are you trying to create? And you can see examples there, a paper, review, project, competitive intelligence report as business students do that, and among many other possibilities. And also, who are you, right? Role playing. Are you sometimes it's useful to say, I'm a student doing this project, help me with this. But you also may identify as a researcher, because you are a researcher too, or in business context, a consultant, or a type of profession you're working on. So the purpose and roles should be stated. And this dramatically, as many of you probably know, impacts what you're doing. Sometimes, like for a studying context, like using AI as a study tool, you might say, explain this to me like I'm a sophomore in high school. I want a basic language explanation of this. That's okay. But here we're talking about AI for research, not like studying and tutoring. And so I do recommend, say I'm a researcher. I need professional level scholarly content. I'm a professor, I'm a grad student, or an undergraduate too, but you are researching this topic and you need high level analysis and research tools to tell them who you are and what you're doing. Third, and this gets into, I think, a core information literacy that ties into, what we librarians talk about a lot. What are you looking for? What kind of information? There's so many formats out there, particularly given that these commercial AI tools, like Copilot, for example, are using web content. Typically, we can, if we have time, get into the more specialized RAG tools. There's a talk coming up on February 17, where we're getting into that a little deeper with my colleague Blake Lee. But, for example, Do you only want to find peer-reviewed research? Are you looking for census reports? The census data sets are pretty hard for the AI tools to penetrate and cover, but there are a lot of written up analysis and reports and newsletters the census creates that leverage the content and summarize it, and even provide infographics. And that's content the AI tools have indexed and can provide. Or primary source, I'm doing historical humanities literature work. I need some primary source materials from archives, from archival sources. You could say that. Tell us what you want, and I'll show you examples of that in a minute. Sam, we doing okay?
Yep, no questions so far.
Okay, thank you. All right, 5 and 6. Kind of corollary, as opposed to number 3. Number 4, tell us what you don't want. It's changing, but last year someone did analysis of sources of, I think it was ChatGPT, and Reddit was a huge source. Reddit, consumer content, discussion forums. In fact, I think Reddit was threatening to sue the harvesting of their content, sue OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, among other lawsuits, as you know, from publishers and the newspaper organizations against what they claim the illegal harvesting violation of copyright. Anyway, sorry, I don't really get too much into that. But anyway, Reddit is a core category, as is other things, review sites. There is a trend emerging advertising model for AI to help pay for how expensive it is. And that means that there's a lot of interesting consumer websites being used and Amazon reviews. You can tell them not to do that. Don't include this stuff. Only give me this content. So ask for what you want, ask for what you don't want. 5, what format are you looking for? Often AI Copilot will tell you, do you want a table, or ask you, do you want a table? Do you want a list? Do you want a PowerPoint slide? The integration of Copilot with Microsoft Office enables this pretty easily, but the other tools can do this too. So ask for the format. And then 6, clarifying questions. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to just submit one thing and stop. You can make it a conversation, or at least a series of orders, if you prefer that language, to the AI tool. So give it, tell it if you're leaving something out. Ask me what I'm missing in my question set here. Ask me clarifying questions, and you can see the footnote there. My friend Celia Ross from University of Michigan posted this on LinkedIn once. That's her language I'm quoting by permission. So ask me questions about the project. Keep asking me questions until you've got everything you need to know from me before you run your search. So don't do anything except listen and ask me questions. Don't give me any answers and responses until we finish this series of flipped exchanging. So that's another way to do it. Final thing, value of prompt engineering is looking at aspects of AI that we don't necessarily like or we don't think is appropriate. For example, is there bias? Here is, okay, you're going to give me a response. Can you tell me if there's bias in this or not? That's something that some of the AIs can do pretty well now. And likewise, I might be getting think about a bell curve. I'm getting what's that top of the curve in terms of the most common kind of responses or answers or research conclusions. But are there any emerging viewpoints or opposing viewpoints or contrary findings? Some of them could be kind of crazy out there conspiracy theories, but if I'm looking at scholarly research, hopefully that's not there. Thanks to peer review, right? Assuming that peer review is working correctly, which we know doesn't always happen. But anyway, I might want to hear about some outlying, opposing, contrary points of view. And so please also tell me what those might be, if there is any consensus about, or minority consensus on a different point of view. And finally, as we know, there is bias to what kind of background or cultures reflect the consensus views we often see when the AIs give us the answer to the questions based upon their content they have. We can ask for unrepresented voices. You can say, now tell me how this population would approach this question, or is there some other points of view defined by diversity or lack of diversity in this? So we should not be afraid to ask those questions and ask for a follow-up response representing one of those 4 topics, 4 aspects. Right, those are my 7 prompts. Before we get into my examples, putting these into action, any questions, comments, other ideas at this point?
There's not right now, but y'all feel free to put them in the chat and I'll let Steve know. Someone has their hand raised.
That's Christiane, please go ahead.
Hi. Do you have any insights to share when you're using, for instance, a tool and then it remembers your prompts? So it
Hmm.
knows that I teach communication.
Mm.
Do you think that that improves the quality of using the tool for research or decreases?
Christine, that's a
Any,
great question. Yeah.
yeah,
So we're talking about silos in some extent and the algorithms, right?
yeah.
Same thing with Google searching. Google searching, you get responses, if you're logged in, you get responses that are in some ways informed by your past activities in web searching. AI does that too. You can ask AI, first off, to ignore your history and start fresh. That is something that it will do if you ask it to do that. I do that in Copilot sometimes, saying start fresh, I'm helping this project, don't refer to any, don't think about past things as well, just give me a fresh answer. So that will happen. Otherwise, that's a great question that we could have a discussion about for a while, I think. In some ways, it would help probably because you don't have to, once again, do role playing and give it context. Um, and maybe it knows your favorite formats. Maybe it knows you don't want to have popular, consumer content reviews come up. You want academic research only. It would help you save time, perhaps, if it does that too. But maybe the compiling of past preferences and an algorithmic based silo of information might at some point limit your search. So sometimes you don't. So Christiana, that was a very wishy-washy answer to a very good question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. That's very
Yeah,
insightful.
and it could go either way. But just remember, you can basically turn off the history and say, don't use past history for this question if you think that, and then see, maybe compare
Yeah.
how the answer might
Yeah,
be different or not too.
it's a little bit of trial and error, I
Yeah,
feel,
it
like
is.
when
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
using
yeah.
those tools. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And as you all know, in research, I'm sorry, I'm getting too into this and I got the word. Not repeatability. Someone help me out here. When you do academic research, like a search, you want to be reproducible. Thank you. Like systematic searching, you want very similar, not the exact same answer to be something that other scholars can do. You are fact checking, you want to find the same data that they have or the same research results. And as we all know, whether you're using Google searching or any other search engine or AI, often we get different responses even to the same words we entered. And that's, a limitation of AI for academic research and why we don't use it by itself in isolation typically. But that's also something to consider too. Let me give you some examples. A lot of words are going to be on screen. I will not read them to you. I may just highlight a couple bolded words. So I'm going to let you read some of these. So number one, database searching. Go ahead and read that, please. I'm curious to know if any of you have done this yourself or have your students do this. Uh, we librarians spend a lot of time in our workshops often teaching Boolean searching, right? And or not. We don't use not very often, but it's there. Related to things like phrase searching, quotation marks, parentheses, truncation / wildcards. This is core information literacy, library science practices for working with students. And our databases, such as the EBSCO database, Academic Search Complete, for example, Business Source Complete, those are all EBSCO databases too. AI is, and frankly, often students, even after you do a long workshop, they don't necessarily do this very well. We don't have, our students, and maybe us too, don't necessarily have the strongest language skills. And this is a language skills topic. However, AI is, of course, a language tool. It's not a reasoning tool. I mean, it's a tool that analyzes patterns of words, right? It's word predictions, some would say simplistically, but there's some value in that, and I just said. So if you did this, and if we have time and interest, I could go into Copilot and plug this in and see what we get. But it does a good job. And it will use its own large language model learning to give us synonyms of innovation, in this case, sustainability. It'll do fashion, clothing, and apparel, probably will be in fashion or clothing or apparel. I teach students to do that all the time in one of the business school programs that does a focus on retailing and fashion, the CARS program. But it's good at this. And but also, other big picture here, this is a tool, right? This is part one. You use AI to get a good Boolean search. Then you close out AI. You move over to the library website or Canvas. You find a link to EBSCO, Business Source Complete, Academic Search Complete, PsycInfo, MLA, whatever. And then you plug in that search, maybe change it a little bit and go. And then you work with the articles you got from EBSCO. So now you're totally out of the AI realm and you're in a traditional library database. So this is emphasis of AI being a tool used with other tools with critical thinking and human work always centered in the process. That's one way to emphasize the role of AI research. It's a tool among other tools with us always being in control, at least ideally. All right, another one. I'll let you read this, please. I have two more after this one. And then we'll be about done with this workshop. So, sorry, obviously business-centered, but I'm a business librarian primarily, so that's my examples are going to reflect that. But just noting here about ProQuest, not EBSCO, you could use either one, but it would still do a Boolean search. But other formats, so strategies, case studies, best practices, innovations, or practical business literature aspects for the C-store industry. So another example of it would add to the Boolean search a parenthetical or segment, strategies, or case studies, or best practices, or innovations, and then it had something separate for C-stores, convenience stores. So, but example of asking for what I want. I don't want academic research here. That's not relevant for this project. It is a consultant project. I want strategies, case studies, best practices, innovation articles, practical from this industry. In other words, trade literature. We say it's a third category of literature besides academic literature and magazines that the business students can use through these databases. So another variation. All right, something a little bit different.
Hey, Steve, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
This is Sam. Do you find that it makes a difference inputting different databases? Like it will give you different results if you put EBSCO versus ProQuest into the AI prompt?
Sam, good question. No, I don't see a difference. And as you know, we can use the same Boolean searches in all these products, or JSTOR and other ones as well. So it doesn't make a difference. But examples I've seen, it's good to tell the AI exactly what the goal is and where I'm going to put the search, right? If I ask for a Google search, give me a really good Google search on this topic, that could be relevant for this particular project. It would not be this fancy, given that Boolean does default and, for example, as many of you know. But then we'll also do some other things in the background as well. So no, it doesn't matter if you do EBSCO or ProQuest or JSTOR. It just knows that you are losing a commercial product that has searching as a Boolean as a default. Is that a good answer, Sam?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. All right, here is one that's quite different and more data-centered, but still academic in focus. Sorry it's so long. Looking at the clock, so I'm going to talk about this briefly. So you can see what I highlighted in bold, emphasizing things. So you're looking at both scholarly literature, econ lit if you're an economist, but wherever those journals happen to live, but also organizations that are publishing research that aren't necessarily journals, but are still important gray literature, right? We might call it. So BEA and National Federal Reserve Bank are federal government agencies. Federal Reserve's a little independent, as we know from politics. Hopefully it'll stay that way. Sorry, that's an aside. NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research, is very important for economists too. And notice what I'm asking for, right? Again, tools and a process. Data. I want a list of data. Don't give me the answers. Don't give me the data, your data analysis, but give me the data variables that are relevant to this topic of work from home behavior. Make it a table, a spreadsheet. Also tell me, what data sets you found this from. Is it from a Federal Reserve Bank data set? Is it Census Bureau? Something totally different? World Bank? I don't know. How often is it updated? Is it updated monthly, annually, every 5 years? Date parameters there, national level data. I don't want states. I don't want international. And again, leaving something out. Would it help you to know something? And if so, tell me what that clarifying question should be. So there we go. One more example, a little bit shorter. I won't discuss this one much, but again, it's a process. I want a list of words, keywords and phrases. This, again, something AI is good for is how words tend to be lumped together in usage, meaning connections. So in this case, I want keywords that would help me make a search engine optimize my website for search engine analytics, and keyword matching for Google Ads. Obviously, you could argue this is not necessarily a scholarship question. It's for a class, though, so that was my context here, too. All right. I'm going to wrap this up. There's some discussion about whether prompt engineering is still as important as it used to be. For example, prompt engineering was a hot job title like 2 years ago, and we were like, oh, we could get this job, and it's like a huge salary bump. But those are gone. You don't see ads anymore for prompt engineers in LinkedIn anymore. And because the AI seems to be doing better each upgrade with reasoning, with context awareness, and the ability to follow instructions, it's often prompting us to do better prompt engineering. So the need to have a big paragraph written, one as crazy as this one, not crazy, but detailed, and then plop it in. Maybe it's not as important, but still, as a teaching tool, as a critical thinking method, I still like doing this kind of complicated requirements for prompt engineering. But we will see how prompt engineering continues to evolve. These links I will put in the chat in a second after I close my sharing. Just basically, I have a research guide. You'll see some similarities to what we just covered that's there. Among hundreds and thousands of prompt engineering guides for academics, there's a good one here from a professor named Cynthia Albee. And UNCG has its official prompt engineering page. It's a copy of what Michigan has done, but still it's useful. So I'm going to put that in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions, comments, other points of view that you would like to discuss or share. Christiane, please.
Do you have any experience using AI agents for research? Because that's something that I've never used. If you could share.
I have not either yet. Yep. And I was reading this morning a discussion. It was a conference proceedings article. We will have to see how agents impacts our research we do. So I'm very interested in that topic. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Richard. Other questions, comments, or other ideas or recommendations you might have based upon your own work with prompt engineering? And I have a question for you all if you've got a minute, if there isn't anything. All right, I'm going to ask it to you. So this is the first time the library's done an AI talk. Many of us have been playing with, exploring, and even, as you saw here, using it in classes for a long time. And I know that there's so much out there on AI, including from academics. But given that, is there any aspect of AI that you'd be particularly interested in the library talking about in the future, besides the one that my colleague Blakely and I are doing on February 17th? Thank you, Sam. The February 17 one would be interesting in part because they're doing different things. There's search augmentation and meeting, adding a meeting level of analysis. Some is simply summarizing documents. And sometimes those are pre-composed by AI, but sometimes the summary is context sensitive, depending on the search you did that resulted in that article. That's like ProQuest for EBSCO. And there's also AI tools that are looking at only content that is produced by a subset of content. That's RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and it gives you a meaning-based summary. So not just the search results, but a summary of the meaning of the search results. That's something that Statista is doing when you do a statistical search in that database. It's a little more socialized, but they cover all topics. So we may cover that as well. Yep, AI agents. Thank you, Christina. I need to learn a lot about that before I can do a talk on it. But that's an emerging thing, and so I'm writing that down. Thank you. All right, it's 12:31. Thank you for being here. Anything else, anyone? Please go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I think I have a very quick question about so-called AI hallucination. When you're doing the engineering, which is very helpful, I just feel like you're treating AI like our personal secretary, asking them to do this and this and what I want. But my concern is how do you differentiate from the facts versus the fake?
Good question. That would be a good topic, right, Sam, for us to cover, or someone to cover from our point of view. I'm going to put a link into chat, which goes to my research guide on AI, specifically on evaluation and critical thinking. So as you all saw, and you already knew this, I'm sure, we don't use AI for research as the beginning and ending, right? It generates content that we then work with or process and fact check. So it's still, even though there's some discussion that hallucinations are declining a bit, but they still exist, particularly when you're using commercial tools like Gemini and ChatGPT and Copilot, you still need to do fact checking yourself. And I love how Copilot has for many years given you links up front. So it makes it easy to check. Whereas Gemini, I have to force it. Tell me where you got this. I need to check on this. But so that is one option. But sorry, quick answer is just to look at some of the notes I have in that webpage that prompts us all, and students particularly, to try to identify quality and verify information and therefore hopefully recognize and then reject any hallucinations we see. I think that was kind of a quick response, but was that a good response to your good question?
Yeah, yes. I'm looking at the web page and I kind of a little bit slow in reading and scrolling down. But yeah, it's very helpful information.
Okay.
Also, I was thinking because we have so many AI models now, is that possible to let them cross-examine each other saying, hey, Gemini, please check ChatGPT for the accuracy?
That's an interesting question. I've not tried that before, but you could certainly share a prompt and response from one AI tool, I think that's what you're suggesting, right, into another AI tool and say, analyze this and see what you think. It'd be kind of fun to make them compete with each other with the note that the winner is the most, critical thinking fact-checking tool. That would be interesting to try as well. However, at some point, the human and, the student and the faculty member has to also weigh in on the content too. So I'd be hesitant to tell students that's the conclusion is simply to have the AI tool analyze the other AI tool and whatever they say wins. But that's a great question. That'd be fun to try.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome. Yeah. And Christiane notes Notebook LM. You all use Notebook LM. It is a Gemini tool. You can, among other things, feed it a group of articles and have it do an analysis just of that article content. It's also really good at creating infographics from that work as a meta-analysis sort of tool. That's a variation maybe in what King was just referring to. Thank you all. Any other thoughts, comments, other ideas? Otherwise, Sam, should we wrap it up and send people back to their work?
Yeah.
Are they?
Thank you all for coming. I dropped the stuff in the chat, and you will receive a follow-up email from me with this recording and Teams, YouTube, etc. Later today or tomorrow, depending on how busy I get with stuff. So thanks y'all for coming. This was great. And again, sign up again for Steve's second one. I think a lot of y'all are signed up. It's the same workflow. You'll get the email, the calendar invite, and stuff the day the week of, usually the day before. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you all. Take care.